Title belts to Hall of Fame. Doug and Tommy carved the name. Fists of fury and hearts of gold. Every story, every fight retold. Tales of glory, laughter, cry. Tennessee warriors with hearts open wide. In the ring or on the air, legends living without a care. On the mic they roar, on the mat they soar. Dangerous conversations, fans wanting more. Podcast kings ruling the waves. Memphis wrestling raising the stage.
Hey everybody, welcome back once again to Dangerous Conversations with Dangerous Doug Gilbert and Tommy Wildfire Rich. Guys, how we doing this week?
Tommy, how are you doing?
Shoot, it's a beautiful world. It's beautiful in Myrtle Beach today. Everything's good. Big shout out to all the fans, everybody tuned in. Looking forward to a little Q&A tonight, man. It's going to be a good night.
Oh, man, it sure is. I was away from you guys last week. I had a little business to take care of, but I heard y'all told some great stories about Tommy's, one of his illustrious runs in Continental Championship Wrestling with his cousin Johnny, and I heard y'all told some real good stories, and I've got a lot of feedback on that. And, man, I'm just happy to be here with y'all this week.
Well, we're glad to have you back. We had a good time last week. Tommy was a little worried about doing a handicap match without his tag team partner there, but he got through it just fine, didn't we, Tommy?
Yes, sir. We walked right through it, didn't we?
Yes, sir. Well, man, speaking of this weekend, as you're listening to this, if you're catching this on late Thursday night or anytime Friday or early Saturday, there is time to get to the Carl Perkins Civic Center for the Jackson Comic Expo. You guys are going to be there most of the day, signing autographs, taking pictures. What do they say? Kissing hands and shaking babies, or however that goes. You know,
shaking hands and kissing babies.
There it is. There.
Whatever. I guarantee you, Tommy knows that one and everything. But yeah, hey, we'll be there all day, and there'll be a lot of the, as Tommy says, a lot of the different dressed people there that does the drawings and all the cartoon stuff and everything. But for sure, me and Tommy will be there. And like I said, anybody that wants to come on out to the Carl Perkins Civic Center right downtown Jackson there. And you see Tommy and myself, we'll be there from, I think it's like 8 or 9 to 4 p.m. So, I mean, we'll be there for a good while. So, I mean, anybody come on out, you got any chance during the day, come on out and see me and Tommy. We'll sure be there.
Yes,
Absolutely.
sir. Looking forward to that. I'm as excited about meeting the fans as I am seeing the people, man. It's going to be so cool, man. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And then we got a big match that night in Blytheville, Arkansas, fundraiser for St. Jude's Hospital. So, yeah, it's an exciting weekend this weekend, man.
Man, that's going to feel like an old-time Saturday for you guys.
Yeah.
Doing the show during the day, then hopping in the truck and booking it to Blytheville, Arkansas for the show that night. Man, you're going to feel like it's 90s USWA all over again, right?
You ain't kidding, man. It's going to be like Tommy said, we have a good time seeing the fans and everything. And then after we see them that day and everything, we get to go over there to Blytheville and see them that night. I think we're doing a little meet and greet before the show that night and take some pictures. I think they're going to have some people in the back that we're going to take some pictures with. So that'll be cool and everything also. And then like Tommy said, we got a match after that we'll be having and everything. So it'll be a full day and a full night. And Tommy flies in on Friday, and I think he flies home on Sunday or Monday one. So we're going to have a good weekend.
Memphis Mafia back together, making it happen all weekend long. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you get out there and see the guys. Also coming up Friday, March the 7th. Tell us about what you got going on that weekend, Tommy.
You had
Feds Creek Elementary School. I'll do it.
Yeah,
Vikings Voyage.
Yeah.
Is that the Crow?
Carl Fergie building, didn't you? Building, yeah. Fergie Gymnasium, yeah. Yeah, you had to be confused for a minute when you said Carl Fergie.
Hey, Gene, that's where we're going on the cruise at, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's the That is the Viking Voyage 2 Return to the Russians. There's going to be communist Russians still going on up in Kentucky. So,
oh my gosh. I might ought to go help Tommy that night, Gene.
I know you might better sneak up there because the following Friday night, Doug, you are going to be at the Chester County High School in Henderson, Tennessee for the big fundraiser up there for the Carl Perkins Child Abuse Center. And that's an annual thing that's been going on quite a while. You're going to be there, the Spellbinder, Kevin White, a lot of the old Memphis wrestling stars are going to be getting together for that one, right?
Yeah, they sure will be. That's going to be a cool night. Like I said, Tommy had done booked himself somewhere else where he would be there and everything. But, man, we try to get as many of the guys from the past up there that we can and everything. And they have once a year, they have a show. And all the ticket sales, the proceeds that comes through the gate goes to the Carl Perkins Child Abuse Center. And, it's hard to get a cause more worthy of that. And as I say that, I think about, this Saturday night, me and Tommy were going to Blythe on that the proceeds of that funds the St. Jude's Hospital in Memphis. So like I said, there's a lot of good causes and stuff that we're doing things for. And but that Carl Perkins Child Abuse, like you said, we've been doing that about 12 or 13 years, Gene. We go there once a year, and every person that buys a ticket, all of the gate goes to the Carl Perkins Child Abuse Center. And then they have sponsors that pay the wrestlers. So, I mean, that's a legit deal that's really good and everything. And like I said, I'm glad Tommy was booked, which he stays booked most of the time, whether it's with me or without me. But Tommy was booked somewhere up north, I think, that weekend. But, yeah, that's one. I can't wait for that. I always like that show every year, and it's really cool.
Got to book Tommy early.
For two great causes, man. That's going to be a heck of a, both of them, the child abuse and the children's hospital, man. Come have some fun and donate for a cause, man. You can't beat that.
And Gene, everybody wants to get out and boo or cheer or holler or get something out of their system as far as if you want to holler or whatever you want to do. That's one good thing about coming to wrestling and seeing all of us. You can get as loud as you want and ain't nobody going to care.
That's right, man. It's a lot of fun. It's a great release. You can go out there, like I said, you can holler and scream and have a big time and support a great cause at some of those events. So that's really cool. You guys are doing that. I know it was announced this past week, Doug, that Saturday, April 12th, you're going to be at the big Crossroads Clash event for EPW in Corinth, Mississippi. So got that coming up. Tommy's got quite a few events in Kentucky. So if you want to know what these guys have going on, you can always go to douggilbertpodcast.com. You can check out the Facebook page, facebook.com/Doug Gilbert Podcast. And we keep all these flyers up there, just like the TWA One and Done coming up May the 3rd in Philadelphia. Man, the Memphis Mafia is business is picking up, as somebody once said.
Right. Gene, have we ever heard any more about who Shane Douglas's partner's going to be?
Shane Douglas is staying pretty quiet about that. I don't know if he's ashamed of who he's bringing or if he thinks the element of surprise is going to get the better of y'all. I don't know, but I haven't been able to get it out of Shane Douglas's camp nor Joel Goodhart. And, Joel Goodhart is prone to talk, but he's not talking about that.
I was fixing to say, Jesus, yeah, he's prone to talk. We talked with him for an hour and 15 minutes, and we didn't talk but 2 minutes. So,
yeah, that was a good time. If y'all missed that one, go back and check out our recent interview with Joel Goodhart from Tri-State Wrestling Alliance for the big One and Done event coming up in May that these guys are going to be at. But, we tell you all the time on this show, it's always in the notes of every show. Send your questions to the email address, douggilbertpodcast@outlook.com, and I will ask your questions here on the air. Well, we have got a collection of those questions, and right here this week, we are going to ask them. Guys, are you ready to answer some listener questions?
Man, I'm sure ready.
All right. Well, let's get after it. So, and this gentleman has asked some questions in the past. Drake the Snake asked, Tommy, did you ever meet Vince McMahon, and did he ever try to sign you to the WWF in the 80s?
I met him one time. He come to Memphis, to the Mid-South Coliseum, and I met him there. They had one of them joint shows or something. But I met him then. I was supposed to go one time, and just old Southern boy, and I had stuff going on at home, so I never did make the run.
All right, and I know Doug had some dealings with the WF. Did you ever have much dealings with Vince McMahon? And I know you made your Royal Rumble trip, and they came to Memphis quite a bit, and you were there.
Yeah, I met Vince quite a few times. I met him, I think, the night me and Tommy. I'd met him prior to that, but when I should have met him was when I went to the Royal Rumble. I was supposed to go a day before and met him and stuff, but I changed my flight and flew out the next day. So that didn't probably get over with him or any of his guys too much. But like I said, I got to the pay-per-view started, I think at 6 or something like back then. I got to the pay-per-view at 4:30 or 5, and I just took a plane straight from the airport straight to the pay-per-view, and I walked in like an hour before it started, and they, that didn't get over real well. That was back when you had a meeting the day before of the pay-per-view, and Vince, you had to walk up and shake his hand and everything.
It's the ring, so to speak.
Yeah, and needless to say, I was working in Nashville that night, and I changed my ticket, so I didn't get into that. But I met Vince, like Tommy said, there's quite a few times in Memphis that we met that I said hello to him, and he said hello and everything. But it was always cordial and everything. I never asked him for anything or went out of the way. Like I said, it was cool. Doing the pay-per-view was cool with him, and me and Tommy working the shows against his tag team champions was always cool. But I always thought Vince was as far as when I was around him.
You're late, pal. Where you been?
Yeah, I guarantee you I got that one.
Well, gotta get Nashville. You can't leave the Nashville fans hanging, right?
Well,
so question for you here, Doug. Hot Stuff's #1 fan asks, Doug, had Eddie not had the unfortunate car accident in 1983 while working for the WWF and continued working that style like he did against Tiger Mask, do you think his career would have taken a different path had he continued working that junior heavyweight style similar to guys like the Dynamite Kid, Owen Hart, and guys like that?
Well, he really loved that. I mean, he loved that style and everything. I mean, that's one of the things that Vince Sr., he'd seen him work and everything in Puerto Rico, and that's where different people have always asked and different questions about how did Eddie wind up there during that time. Well, it was because Vince Sr. had come down to, and at that time they was real tight. And like I said, I think Tommy went and worked at Madison Square Garden for him once, didn't you, Tommy? Didn't you go for?
Yeah.
Was that Vince Sr.? And but those guys and the NWA, everybody thinks they're bitter rival guys, but they wasn't. Back in those days, like Vince Sr. would come to the NWA board like meetings like once a year. They'd have it at like one of the different territories, and that year they had it in Puerto Rico. Well, that's where Vince Sr. saw Eddie at. That's where my dad and Eddie was working at, and that's why he told him would he like to come, and he seen him work and said, would you like to come and work for me? Well, at that time, in my brother's career and it being early on and everything, I mean, he'd heard everybody talk about going to Madison Square Garden, going to New York, going to work for Vince Sr. So it was a big deal at the time. And it was cool that he got to do that. And like I said, Eddie was was more of a wrestler than an entertainer. And as he went on, the entertainment part come on to him. But I mean, he loved wrestling and doing like the Tiger Mask type stuff. And then if you notice when Muta come to WCW, him and Eddie worked the program together first, but he loved that type of style and everything.
Yeah, that match really, really holds up still today. I watched that just recently, the match with Tiger Mask from the Philadelphia Spectrum, and it's on YouTube, folks. If you've never seen that, if you only know Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, from later in his career, from 87 forward, go check out that Tiger Mask match. Like Doug said, it was a very different look and style for Eddie. I don't prefer one over the other, but it's something different if you've never seen it. So,
you know what? One guy told me one time, Gene, he said, I watched Eddie during those days, and you know who he reminded me of? I said, who is that? And it wasn't one specific person, but he said, all the Canadians that come along during he was talking about during the Dynamite Kid, Bret Hart, during those days. He said, Eddie kind of reminded me of one of those guys. I said, what do you mean? He said he was quieter and he was just more of a wrestler, but I mean, whether it's wrestling or entertaining or both, I mean, I thought Eddie did both of them great and everything. But I mean, if you watch what you're talking about that match, you'd see what the people that was telling me that what they was talking about.
Absolutely. And I had never really thought much about that until like I read this guy's question, the Hot Stuff's #1 fan here. And when he mentioned Dynamite Kid and Owen Hart specifically, I was like, yeah, you would think that Eddie might have came from that Stampede, territory up there.
And that guy's thing was, you know what he said? And I asked him, though, I said, well, what exactly do you mean? He said, because the guys could really wrestle, but it was like they was focused, but they was quiet. He was talking about, like, as far as, he said it wasn't like they had much as far as, I don't want to say not charisma, but it was more focused just wrestling than it was entertainment as far as that went.
Right. There certainly was no walking and talking or jawing with the crowd or any of that,
Right. And two, you got to realize all those, and Tommy can tell you this because I think they went through 3 or 4 or 5 of them. All those Tiger Mask guys, man, Eddie really had, and that was the original, I think, that Eddie was working with, wasn't it, Gene? The man, all of those guys, they didn't give nobody that gimmick unless they was really good in Japan. Because I mean, that's like I don't want to say godly, but it was a gimmick, like only the most over guys they would put it on.
Yeah, because it was a huge comic book character, so they were automatically a star as soon as they slipped that mask on. So they had to live up to that expectation.
Right.
Yeah, good point. So the next one, Stern Gagne asks, Tommy, how was it working with adorable Adrian Adonis in the AWA in 1988?
Oh, I had a blast. Excuse me. I knew Adrian real good, man. He was in Georgia, and me and him got along good there. And then, so when I went up to Minnesota, he was up there too. And he was always cool, man. And I tell you what, he was another. You got the bar fight, you'd want him on your side. He was tough. He was a tough fella.
I read a book on him that was written a few years ago. It's called Flowers for Adrian, and he's a guy that doesn't get talked about enough. We kind of talked about that with Mr. Briscoe when Gerald Briscoe was on the show, when he was talking about him and Jack working with Adrian and Dick Murdoch. And a lot of people just remember that the end of his career, that adorable Adrian thing, and people didn't love it, and he had gained a lot of weight and all that kind of stuff. But man, he was a heck of a worker. He had good runs in Japan, in the early 80s, and him and Murdoch and him and Jesse Ventura.
And Gene, that deal you're talking about, man, I thought, which it might only be me, but I thought the deal with him and Murdoch, because it was so different, the North-South connection or whatever it was they was called. I thought that was really cool, which, I'm a huge Dick Murdoch fan, but I liked Adrian too, and I thought them two fit together, and I laughed at Murdoch. And Murdoch told me one time, he said, oh, it was everything I could do to keep from killing him. I said, do what, Dick? He said, we traveled together and we went everywhere, Doug. I mean, they even went to Japan together, I think a couple of times and everything. But he said, but now that was a funny connection because asked Tommy knew how Adrian was a lot more than I did, but he wasn't nothing like Dick Murdoch. And,
no, that was too obvious.
But Murdoch said they'd be.
He drank that beer, but Adrian, he to see, man. That was back in the 80s.
That was it. And Murdoch told me, he said, Doug, we'd be going through New York, he's talking about over all the overpasses that crossed over and under one another. He said, that silly ass Adrian will start throwing beer bottles out of the window of the cars. He said, I knew he was going to get somebody killed or get us put in jail, which I laughed at Murdoch because he loved his beer and everything, but he didn't want to get no trouble and everything. But he was funny. But they said, I've heard a bunch of stories in which Tommy could probably tell us a bunch more, that Adrian was a wild man at times.
Man, somebody's a wild guy when Dick Murdoch's the voice of reason,
Oh, Lord, them two together, that had to be wow.
So our next question comes from Philip Rogers, and this, I'm glad he asked this because I have since wondered about this. So Philip says, at the Clash of Champions Guts and Glory from the summer of 1989, Ranger Ross wrestled a masked wrestler that they called the Terrorist. At the time, and for years since, I assumed that this was Jack Victory until about a year ago. Someone told me they thought the Terrorist was actually Doug Gilbert. Now, Doug, can you confirm this? And if it was you in that outfit, how in the world did you manage to stay in that outfit in that steaming hot armory or whatever it was they were in that night?
Well, I'm going to tell you what they was in that night, Gene, was a base. We was actually on a base, a military base. Now, can you imagine being on a military base and having all military people in there, no civilians, and they tell you to get dressed and they start giving you different people's stuff. And if you look, it's one of Muda's masks
Tape
that taped around my neck like they're about to choke me to death. And I got a little eye. And I said, well, what are y'all going to call me? And they said, the terrorist. I said, in a freaking military base, y'all are going to call me the terrorist? Y'all trying to get me killed or what? But I mean, it was something. They had me some freaking different type pants or something, and I had that hood. If you go back and watch it, you laugh your butt off. But it was hot. Oh, it was one of them deals. By the time I got to the back and I was trying to get that mask off, and I couldn't get the tape. They had it taped around my neck. I couldn't get it off. I thought I was going to freaking suffocate. But I thought the match wound up being okay and everything. But it was with Ranger Ross, and he was sure over there. Like I said, where was you going to get him over any more than a military base?
Exactly. Yeah, even as a 12-year-old kid watching that Clash of the Champions live, I was like, they have taped Great Muda's entrance mask on with athletic tape. And at the time, I thought it was Jack Victory, too. And then years later, I realized, I was like, wait a minute, I think that's Doug. I've been this guy asked.
You know what? Walking to the ring, I probably wish it had been Jack Victory, but I'm sure I like the payoff and everything. But you talk about kind of a scary, and that's what they told me. They said, we're going to have you surrounded by security. I thought, well, I hope so. I thought these freaking everybody in this building is military. I thought they'd beat me up before I get back.
Yeah, that could go bad in a hurry.
Oh yeah, Eddie would put me in any kind of different spot. I mean, it didn't matter if it was needed. You want to work? Yeah, it didn't matter what it was, but I wanted to work and I wanted to make money. But sometimes you had to do a few odd things. But yeah, I stayed busy.
That was like what, June or July, I want to say, because Jim Ross has kept all night on commentaries like, "Oh my God, it's so hot in here! It's so hot in here!" And then you come out in this freaking coat and a big mask taped to your head. I'm like, my God, he must be having a heat stroke in that thing.
Yeah, it was like 96 degrees, something silly in there. I mean, nothing. But every one of the military people, they had on long sleeve. You know, they had on their full uniforms like their. And I thought, shit. But it was something. But no, that was me actually.
And that was one of the only nights that Eddie ever threw the fire in WCW. He came out and tried to burn Muda, and he missed and hit one of the guys, Trent Knight or whatever, one of the job guys.
Hit one of the enhancement talent guys.
And Jim Ross said that the reason Muda was so scared of the fireball and the reason Eddie threw a fireball at him is because his father, the great Kabuki, had his face burned. And that's why Kabuki wore paint. And I thought, well, that's an elaborate story, but it makes sense of why Muda would be scared of the fire. So I thought that was pretty fun backstory.
Jim Ross must have been high that night, wasn't he?
I always wondered if that was a Jim Ross just saying that off the clip or if Eddie had told him, like, hey, say this whenever we do this, because I could see that going either way, honestly.
Well, but you do know at first when Muda come in, they wanted to say he was Kabuki's son, right?
Oh, yeah.
They said that a few times and everything, which I love Kabuki, and that's another guy that Tommy could tell you some stories about. But I went to, he went for the same office I did in Japan. Kabuki did for about the last part of my career over there. Man, you're talking about such a great, nice gentleman.
Oh, I mean, he come to Georgia, and he was with Gary Hart. Him and Gary was together, and shoot, I worked angle with him. God, what a hell of a work! It's easy, and I mean, and like Doug said, just a real nice guy too. I mean, I always enjoyed working with him, and he taught me some stuff too. I mean, of course, like I said, there again, Georgia, I got to wrestle all the ones that draw money. I got to wrestle them, and I listened, so they all just taught me a little bit.
I think the video is on our Facebook page, but you wrestled Kabuki in Japan as well on one of your trips over there, Tommy.
That was for war, wasn't it, Tommy?
I think so.
And he also, Tommy might have wrestled him for our company also, IWA, but I know I wrestled him for IWA and then wrestled with him in his retirement match. I think it was his last retirement, which I think he come back and did a match or two, but it was his last retirement match, I think, with me, him, and Terry Funk in a 6-man tag at Cork and Hall, and that was really cool. To me, it was something special just to be in the ring with him and Terry Funk, but it to be his retirement in Tokyo, and that was a really neat deal, sell out at Cork and Hall.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's on our Facebook too, as a matter of fact, if people wanted to go check that out. Hey, before we move on to the next question, Tommy, you mentioned him there being Kabuki's manager, and he was Muda's manager as well. What can you tell us any stories about Gary Hart and your dealings with him, how he was?
He was a hell of a cool guy. Now, I mean, there might be some folks say something, I always got along with him. I mean, Gary was cool, but I was just around him when he come to Atlanta, he was like, of course he went everywhere, but like Dallas, he was out there in Dallas but yeah, Gary, he was a real nice fella too.
And Tommy, what I always heard about him, which I was around him in Georgia more than I was around him anywhere, but what I always heard, Gene, and I took this, and when you was talking to him, I think you could tell it. And like I listened to him a lot, but I always heard he was such a smart guy. I don't want to say a genius, but he was really smart about the business and everything. And I heard he had a great mind as far as booking and everything, which different people had different thoughts, like Tommy said of Gary, but he was always really nice. I mean, I think some people he kind of spooked out. Just don't you, Tommy? And he was like Eddie. I mean, just some people got the knack for that, and Gary was real good with it too.
Kind of something you mentioned there, Doug. I had always kind of heard that a lot of the great angles in Texas and some of them down in Florida, people didn't realize came from Gary Hart. And, they didn't really know that he worked in the office and that, he wasn't just a heel manager, that he had a lot of influence in the booking as well.
Yeah, I heard he had, as far as a lot of influence on different angles. And I mean, that he was just a really, like I said, I don't want to say brilliant, but a really smart, wrestling-minded guy that, like I said, a lot of people just seen his persona, and I think people almost, Gina, and this is funny to say, I don't know how you would say it, Tommy, but almost kind of scared of him, which Gary could be a spooky fella, but what I'm talking about, I think a lot of people didn't get to know him, to know that side of him and everything. But like if you traveled with him or made trips and got to know him and everything, he was a cool dude and everything.
So this next question's kind of fun. It's kind of a dream match scenario. Steven Stanfield asks, if Doug Gilbert and Tommy Rich were to wrestle a tag team match against Mr. R and the Dark Patriot, who would win?
I'm sure me and Tommy'd have to put them over probably.
Or it could be a Broadway. It could be a Broadway. It could be a drop.
I was going to say, I guess the smart aleck answer to that would be whoever the booker wanted to win. I guess it depends on who was booking the show that night. But I don't know. I thought that was fun.
Hey, if Tommy was booking, me and him would win.
Of course, now, Doug has kind of owned up to being the Dark Patriot, but we can't say for sure who Mr. R was. Tommy has still claimed that was Brad Armstrong, so we're gonna go with that.
Hey, he says Brad Armstrong, and he was, what did he say, mysterious?
He was the mysterious Mr. R. So, Tommy, ever the worker, Tommy is still keeping that mystery alive. So, you got to respect him for that.
Hey, Tommy had Brad going to the gym for him in them days.
Yeah.
Jim, he was telling him, Brad, you need to tone up a little bit. I don't think people are going to believe you're me under that.
Yeah. You're a funny man. I had to go to the gym to keep up with Brad.
Maybe that was their plan. They were trying to pull one over on you. So our next question, Crowbar Johnson asks, Tommy, in WCW in 1989, you used the Hank Williams Jr. song, All My Rowdy Friends Are Coming Over Tonight, as your ring music before they switched to non-licensed music. At that point in time, was WCW allowing you to choose your own music, or did they just assign that song to you?
That's a tough question. I think they were probably just playing it.
I could see that when I read that question, I was like, I could see that one going either way. I could see Tommy picking that one, but I also
I
could
like
see
that
them
one. Yeah, I
designing it.
like all my rowdy friends.
But like Eddie was coming out the hot stuff and stuff like that. But I'm sure they knew that before he got there. So I mean, they probably just played it. It's not like he handed him a tape when he got there, like at an indie show. But
I'm gonna tell you, Eddie was one of the biggest Hank Williams Jr. fans that they've ever been. So I could see if Eddie had any sway in that, he's probably one of the ones. I mean, if you look on some of the tag matches that Tommy and Eddie has got, when Eddie wouldn't wear the tuxedos and stuff, he'd wear a Hank Williams Jr. jacket to the ring. So I've always thought that was pretty cool. And with Hank Williams Jr. living right up here in Paris, not 40 miles from us and everything, that's kind of a neat deal.
Oh yeah, Eddie loved that Hank. Yes, sir.
I was rewatching some of the '88 episodes when you guys were burning everybody on TV, and there's more than once that Eddie was wearing one of those satin Hank Williams Jr. jacket as he was out there lighting Randy Hill's head on fire, and Jerry Jarrett and everybody else. That was some fun stuff. We'll talk about that here one day as well. But
hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. But that's not all. You can also check out the Pro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puroresu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia.
Hey everybody, Gene Jackson here, inviting you to check out the Retro Wrestling Review, where each week I'm joined by some great co-hosts who help me review classic episodes of USWA Championship Wrestling, and right now we are doing week-by-week reviews of 1993. But we don't just do reviews, sometimes we get a chance to interview some of the people who were there and lived it, plus do watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun, so check out new episodes that drop every Wednesday at WrestleCopia.com. And to find links to everything associated to the podcast, you can go to uswapodcast.com.
Right now, Edward Extreme asks, Doug, was there any particular reason why Eddie brought you into ECW as the Dark Patriot rather than as Doug Gilbert?
Well, I like the gimmick from Global as far as the Dark Patriot gimmick, and I just figured it'd be better. Actually, I wanted to try, and I knew I'd be in Japan some, but I didn't actually want to go in as Eddie's brother. I wanted to try that and see if I could do a few different things and get the gimmick over, I guess.
And it felt like I rewatched some of this not long ago, and when they were first introducing Dark Patriot, Eddie actually says at first, like, because you guys had last feuded in Global, so when they first mentioned, I don't remember if it was Paul or Morocco or who, but somebody had mentioned that, hey, we're bringing the Dark Patriot. Eddie's like, I don't like the Dark Patriot. Why are you bringing the Dark Patriot? And they had to calm him down and be like, no, it's cool, he'll be fine. So I kind of felt like they were given that option in the future if you guys needed a feud again or go against each other or whatever, you had that, and it's easier to sell that as Eddie versus Dark Patriot than Eddie versus Doug. So.
Right. And I mean, they wasn't really, I mean, I think there was a team up there called the Destroyers or something, but they just come in every once in a while and everything. You didn't really have any mask guys as far as like that they was really pushing and everything. Like I said, I think it was just a outlet for me to try to get the character over and do some different things and everything. Me and Eddie wound up tag teaming some and everything, and that was cool, I thought. But it was cool. I had a good time with it, and I mean, I thought everything went really well with it.
I always liked the character, and plus it had just had all that exposure on ESPN just a year or two prior, so why wouldn't you cash in on that? So
right, that was kind of the deal with it. Like I said, I mean, when you don't want to go right in and be, not that it's a bad thing, but just, Eddie was doing his thing, and I wanted to try to be able to do my thing, and I figured the best way for that to happen was just to stay under the hood, so that was kind of the reason.
So Ray Russell from WrestleCopia asked, Tommy, in Ole Anderson's book, he tells a story about you and Nick Patrick planning to jump him over a disagreement that you guys had with him. Do you have any memories of this or have any idea what this was about?
No, I sure don't, because I'd just come around the corner and hit him in the head with a pipe. I don't remember me and Nick. I don't know. That might have been as he was getting that dimension and stuff. I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember that. You might ask Nick Patrick. He might remember. I don't know.
You and that dang Nick were mad at him, wasn't you?
Yeah, I guess. We're going to jump him.
You and that NWO referee were going to get him.
Yeah. Going to jump him, huh?
Hey, was y'all going to get Jody to help y'all?
I don't know where Jody's at. Yeah.
Have him wear that flame mask so y'all could burn him. I need to find. I used to have his book around here somewhere. I need to find that story and just see what. Because when I heard that, I was like, Tommy and Nick Patrick. Like, what an odd pairing that would be. Like, I just can't see you conspiring with Nick Patrick. Like, hey, let's jump Ole when he comes in here in a minute.
Hey, but gee, now that was running buddies though. You might say it was an odd pair.
Nick did run. We all.
Yeah. Nick was one of Tommy's partners. I mean,
so there might be more to that than we think. But,
yeah, it could be.
We'll look into that some more, just like we did with the Bruiser thing from Indiana.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, if I can find some more details, we'll ask again and see if we can make it. It may come to the surface. You may be like, oh yeah, that time we jumped Ole in Columbus, Georgia, and beat the shit out of him.
I was going to say they really did jump Ole, and he didn't fall down.
I bet there was a lot of people conspiring to jump Ole at different times when he was booking anyway, but.
Well,
there's probably a little line that wanted to do that, though, to be honest.
Yeah, I've always heard Ole acted like Wahoo did with me, but Ole acted like that with everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. I've never heard anybody tell a story about how great Ole was to do that. What a sunny personality he had. And I mean, it's all pretty much the same story from everyone. So then you start to think, well, maybe there's something to this. But anyway, Charlie Hayes asks, Doug, will there ever be any more Eddie Gilbert memorial shows, especially in the South? I was never able to attend any of the previous ones because they were so far away from where I live.
There's a possibility that there will be. There's a couple of different people that have called me this year wanting to have one, and they've actually called about wanting to have one in Memphis. But the only thing is with Memphis is your problem is your venue problem. You don't have I was trying to think of the name of the last good venue that the King had down there, and it was like there wasn't really any parking there. The building was nice and everything, but the parking wasn't, there wasn't parking and everything, so it's kind of tough on the venue. And I told somebody, I said, well, if you're going to actually do it, I told the two guys that called me, I said, probably Nashville would be the best location to do it. And they said, you think so? And they said, you think people would come from Memphis, Nashville? I said, well, Nashville was the center of the territory. So you had Memphis, Nashville, Louisville, Evansville. If you wanted to make it a big deal and draw everybody, you could go right to the center and do it there. And like I said, in Nashville, they got so many venues there that, for all the different concerts and different gatherings and everything, I think that would be a cool place. And I'd actually thought about a time or two doing one actually in Lexington, but the only thing, you go back to venue again, and there's one venue that you could use, but it wasn't really big enough. What I was wanting to do myself was bring in like a lot of Eddie's friends from back in the day, like Tommy and say Ricky Moore, different guys that Eddie actually was friends with and stuff, and have a wrestling show around that. And I think that would be really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be great if that ever comes together. So of course, folks, if it does, if and when, you'll hear about it here on Dangerous Conversations. So stick with us.
You'll hear it first right here.
That's right. Absolutely. So next up, Chuck the Truck asks, do either of you have any stories about Ox Baker? He was before my time, but he always looked like a monster in the ring, yet everything I've ever heard, he was a really great guy outside of the ring.
Well, first time I ever seen Ox, what an intimidating guy he was. And I'm sitting in the dressing room, and everybody's getting dressed, and I look down, and the first thing I see is Ox Baker's toes, and he got them painted. He had his toes painted. I thought, oh, my God. I sure didn't say nothing about it, though. But yeah, I worked with Ox some, and it was later. He couldn't move so good, but and I can picture his face. I mean, just when he did that interview, it didn't matter if he could work or not, because then people just was so in awe of him that I mean, when he cut that promo, he would pack it out, and I mean, and I had some good matches with him. But like I said, in his younger day, I think he was really good in his younger day, and he was still drawing. I mean, his old wheels, his knees was messed up when I worked with him, so he wasn't getting around the best in the world,
And Gene, that goes back to something that I'd ask, which of all people, I'd ask, and Tommy will tell you this is strange, but I asked Jerry Lawler about Ox Baker one time, about different guys that was before me and that he worked with. He told me he told me like Tommy just told you, he was a great guy, but he said when they brought him into this territory, that it was like towards the end of his career. And like Tommy said, his knees was bad and everything, but all he still cut a promo and be so believable on that. But like his wheels was really bad. And he talked to me about him, and I asked him about a dozen people, but another one I had said different things about, because I was talking about my dad working with him was Lou Thez, and then he told me about like at the end of Lou Thez's career, them bringing him back through here and at the end of his career, and him working loops around here and stuff. But like guys like that, like it's Tommy's the strangest thing. But I just thought one day me and Lawler was talking, I'd ask him, just throw a name out there and ask him, and he had told me that about those two guys. But he said that he's both great guys, but he said both of them come through here before, but at the end of their careers. And like he said, like Tommy said, Ox cut a great promo and still he still had that look and everything. It's just his wheels was kind of burnt out on him.
I got a chance to meet Ox Baker at one of the fan fests over in Charlotte just a few years before he died, and he still looked the part. Like, if you told somebody to draw like a bad guy wrestler, like he still looked like, he always did. But like this guy said, just one of the nicest guys in the world. He's like hanging out with your grandpa or something. It seemed like a good dude. But, let's see. What's next question here? So Natalie Jones asks, Doug, I just recently learned through your podcast that your grandfather, Arlie Gilbert, was also a wrestler. I didn't know that. I knew about your father and your brother, but not your grandfather. Could you please tell us a little more about him?
Yeah, that was during the carnival wrestling days when you've seen wrestling at the carnival, when you would, like, the guys would challenge, like you could point out in the crowd and challenge guys and everything. It was kind of the.
Was that back when Buford? Was that back when Buford Pusser was doing it too, Dougie?
Well, actually, you're going to laugh, Tommy, but my dad actually wrestled Buford. Buford come along after that, like it's in 60.
Okay, I didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like in 69 or 70 when my dad wrestled Buford. But Buford, They got him to get in the wrestling business for a little bit. And they had a picture on the wall. There's a place down here called in Adamsville, Tennessee, that his daughter, which I think she's passed away now, but that they owned, and had a picture of my dad and Buford on it, and she got my dad to autograph it, and they got it on the wall. They got a restaurant.
Damn, I didn't know that. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of neat too, because I've always watched the old, which they've got the new Buford poster, like I think the one The Rock.
Yeah,
it's actually supposed to be off that, but I'm talking about the ones that the old Buford poster.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had no idea that your dad had wrestled Buford Pusser. That's really cool.
But as far as my grandfather, that was during the carnival days, the carnival wrestling. As far as where people says wrestling, that's carny. Well, I guess it is carny. That's where it started at. Was at the carnival. So
yeah,
wrestling. But that's where my granddad wrestled.
That's cool. So Frankie T asks, Doug, in 1994, Jerry Lawler put his crown on the line against Eddie, who was putting your mom's van on the line. He wants to know, was that really your mother's van? And if not, whose was it and why was it chosen for the match?
You know what? This guy's fixing to pop when I answer this, but I had just watched on I guess he was watching on our site and saw that match and everything.
Yeah.
But when I heard the stipulations of that, I thought Eddie and Lawler had put up everything I think that was possible, from crowns, the rings, the automobiles, to anything you could think of. And but I looked at the van, and I was trying to think, but I never recall my mother having a van like that. But you do got to realize Lawler had deals with everybody in town in Memphis as far as cars with everything. And if he wanted a different car every day, he cut promos, on a weekly basis for car dealerships in Memphis. And he'd be driving something different every week. So if he wanted whatever kind of vehicle it was for Tommy or for myself or for whatever, for like videos or just for like that deal or whatever, he could have whatever he wanted. So actually, I think that was somebody else's minivan, but that's like, people ask me all the time, like when we'd run over Lawler, was that my car or Eddie's car that we was in? Well, it was neither of our cars, because we was in a 4Runner that day. So I had to go around and ask people, hey, you got a vehicle out here? And they'd say, yeah or no. And the one that said yeah was the one that day that wound up getting the short end of the stick, because the windshield and everything else got busted out of it.
Somebody asked me that one time if I knew whether or not, the van was really there, y'all's, and if the car was. I was like, if there's one, I don't know about the van. I said, I have heard the story from several people about the car. I said, so if there's one thing we know about the Gilberts, they make sure not to use their own vehicles for these stunts in the parking lot, which is smart. So
yeah, I was fixing to say, you can keep from getting your stuff tore up, not using your own stuff. But I told somebody, I said, yeah, if we'd run over Lawler in what Eddie was driving that day, which that would have been his 4Runner, I said, he wouldn't have been able to jump up on that hood. We just had him on the front of it, just carried him on down the road. But no, that, knock on wood, that was bless his heart, that was Brian Lee's vehicle, and I had to go back in and tell him, man, I'm sorry, we're carrying your car to get a new windshield put in it, but knocked the glass in the floorboard and in her face and everything. And then I said, how's Lawler doing, by the way? They said he's laying in the floor up there. You can go see. And I thought, oh my gosh.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that at length one of these days, because that's a wild story from beginning to end, from how it was conceived, the whole idea was conceived, and then how it all came together and the end result. But we'll save that for another day for sure. So Sid Fan wants to know, we had teased this at the end of the USWA episode. I referenced it, that in 94, there was scheduled to be a match with you and with Doug and Tommy, you guys together against the Steiner brothers, but it ended up being Brian Christopher and Rick Steiner. I don't know what happened with Scott, but he wants to know, what do you guys remember about that match, and were you relieved when you found out that Scott Steiner didn't make it?
They told me Scott was scared of Tommy when he found out he had wrestled me and Tommy.
Yeah. Yeah. I probably told him I wouldn't wrestle if Scott did.
I do.
But I know it had to be easier with Brian. I know that's for damn sure.
Yeah.
And I do remember the match and everything. I think it was one of those deals where Scott just something had come up and he couldn't come, and they thought it. Brian was the logical. That's who I'd been working against the program against, and so they put Rick with Brian. But I always got along great with Steiners and everything. Like I said, I kind of started a year after Rick or something like that, and for Watts and everything, and that was. I'd mess with them all the time, which I was just 18 years old, so I didn't know nothing about getting hurt. I didn't think nobody could hurt me, and boy, they put me in every kind of hole they would be. Like when I'd work with them in a match, Eddie would book me against Rick Steiner, and man, you talking about a wrestling machine. He could do, if he wanted to do something with you, he could do whatever he wanted. You might as well just go ahead and say, I'm just going to go ahead and lay down, and I'm not going to take this punishment tonight. And we'll be done. But we'd mess with him. I'd mess with him so much, Gene, in the back in the dressing room. I'd take more punishment in the dressing room than I would in the ring. He'd kick. I'd go at him like I could take him down and something. They'd come by me. I'd get behind them and shit. And them guys were so tough, wasn't they, Tommy? They didn't know how tough.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And they always been.
And they like to play.
Oh, and I hated to play.
You want about that playing, huh, Tommy?
Yeah, but they both great guys, though. Yeah, they like to play, though. That's for doggone sure.
So somebody sent us a question based off. They've been watching our me and Josh and Richard's USWA podcast, and recently. Super Mario was on there, and we had some fun with Super Mario in a match of his. What can you guys tell us about Super Mario?
Super Mario was great. Do you remember Super Mario, Tommy? He'd come in with Jimmy Valiant.
Yeah, a little short, heavy-set guy.
Yeah, and he had the restaurant in somewhere in South Carolina somewhere, Tommy, or where was it? Was it Virginia, South Carolina, or he'd say
West Virginia, somewhere up there. It might have been South, or maybe North. Anyway, I stopped by there one time too. We stopped and ate there, but he was a real nice fella. He was quite the character.
They said he was. They did a story on him, and they said he's the wrestler with the thickest ankles and thickest wrists or something, but then it kind of knocked him. But I hated that they knocked him because I like him. He's always so funny. They're like, I try to talk to him, and his accent and everything. Tommy was, he was really, wasn't he Italian?
Yeah.
He was quite.
And he was heavy. Thick with that talking too.
Yeah, he was something else. Did you
kind of like I am with that cornbread.
I'm sure y'all had time talking about him, didn't you, Gene?
Oh, we did, because he shows up and they put him in a match with one of the guys from the training school, this guy called the Hawk. And you can tell that Dave and Corey are getting tickled just calling the match. Like Dave's like, he's the big little guy, and he's just having fun calling the match. And of course, they call him. He gets out of the ring. The match went like 45 seconds. Like he gives the guy a shoulder tackle. Big splash, and he hits him, and he's so oddly shaped he almost rolled over the guy. Like he rolled on him like a beach ball, and he pinned the guy. And Dave calls him over for an interview after the match, and he's so blown up, and he's got that accent, so you really can't tell what he's saying, because he's like, Monday night. And they've put him in, his first match in the territory, they put him in a title match with the Vampire Warrior. And so me and Richard, I'm like, what the hell are we doing? And then Bert Prentice is managing the Vampire Warrior. So Bert comes out there and confronts him. And for the first time ever, Bert actually looks like he's in shape compared to Mario. And he goes up and he belly bumps Mario, which was just, the visual of that alone was just priceless, And he's like, he's got this big fat manager. He's a no good. And here comes Bert. Like, who you calling a fat manager, fat boy? And they're just calling each other fat back and forth. And he belly bumps them. And it was I don't know. It was hilarious. And of course, Vampire Warrior comes out there and just beats the crap out of him and leaves him laying. But yeah, we had some fun with that. Have you heard from anybody since we've put out? I put out a couple of clips where you were. you were talking about the Hall of Fame, them having the Hall of Fame sign at Raw, and I put out a clip of you talking about the thing with the Undertaker. And I see some people have shared it and tagged him in it, so I'm interested to see if he says anything about it or anything like that. Have you got any feedback on that?
No, I ain't got nothing back on it. But yeah, I sure think I always wanted to go to Oregon and work, but that's why I didn't get to. He done got me hired and fired all at the same time.
That's funny.
Yeah, I listened to that. That got over me. I thought that was cool too. Which I mean, when Mark was always here, the Undertaker, he used to ride. Me and him would ride a lot. He was really cool. And when he got up there, like I said, the only time that I was around him was, like I said, I went in and they had assigned me to dress with him and Bret Hart, which they was the main event of the Royal Rumble. And I thought, how in the world, what a kind of reel is this? Put me in the, I thought they'd just put me in there with everybody and we'd all be in there, but they put me in there with the two guys in the main event. And I went there and said hello and everything, and we was cordial and everything. But times had changed a lot from when he was here to there in '96 and everything. But I mean, he was always really cool. Like I said, he was always playful, funny. Here, he was just more business and, like I said, less as far as talkative up there.
Tracy Smothers said the same thing about him, that when Tracy said when he went up that he kind of experienced the same thing, that they had been cool when he was down in Memphis and that he was kind of standoffish and I don't know.
But you also got to realize, Gene, he was the company guy then. And I mean, as far as one of the boys, he wasn't an agent or anything, but he was the guy that handled if anybody got out of line or didn't do right and everything. Yeah. And, I thought about that years later and I thought, well, you know what? If anybody could have got out of line any more than I did that day, I mean, to me, it wasn't a bad thing, but to them, it probably was. To them, it was probably a sign of disrespect, and that's not what I meant for it to be. As far as, to them, you go where you're supposed to go and be on time. I mean, to them, they was inviting me to be on one of their pay-per-views, and I didn't go by their rules. I didn't go up a day before and go to their meetings and go to dinner with them and do everything that I should have done. So if anything, I probably looked, it looked bad as far as to them towards me, as far as like I was being disrespectful and I didn't care. And to be honest, I really do care, but in the same fact, I was making my money from the Tennessee territory at that time. Now, I probably should have looked at it and said, well, man, I might can make a lot more money up here, but I don't know. It's one of them deals, Gene, where have you ever been, I don't say I was scared to go. It wasn't scared as far as not being good enough to be there, but when you're not really certain what would happen if you did go and you're in your comfort zone where you're at and you're making a good living there. And that's kind of, that was kind of my thinking of it. And like I said, I always had Japan to fall back on, which I don't say that as a bad thing. Japan was always, I mean, I could tell them when I was going to go to Japan. I knew that was guaranteed. And then I could come back here and work whatever dates I wanted. And, I should have looked. I mean, Tommy has made 3 or 4 fortunes. I might have made a good living, but I mean, there's probably a few things I should have done different.
Well, did it stick in your head? Like, we mentioned, a friend of y'all's, Tracy Smothers, went up there and they made Tracy Freddie Joe Floyd. And then another friend of y'all's went up there, the Dirty White Boy, and he becomes T.L. Hopper, the plumber. Like, in the back of your mind was like, well, if they bring me in, what the hell are they going to do with me up here? Are they going to turn me into some kind of, clown or, I guess you kind of, there had already been on the table the honky tonk man type Elvis gimmick was one thing that had been talked about, but did that play in your head somewhat?
Well, that kind of did, but you know what? The whole deal with that, and I've said to people before, the thing as far as going in with the gimmick, if Vince was really pissed off at somebody, if they'd really made him mad and he was wanting to push you in that gimmick, it didn't make a crap what happened. He would have pushed you down their throat to get you over. So, I mean, in reality, I probably should have went and done that. I mean, that would probably been a good move. Then again, some people would say it probably wouldn't have. But I mean, if you look back at things, you could say you should have done 50 things differently. But I mean, I don't know that I would, even if I had to do them over again, I don't know if I would change. And like I said, I knew, when you're in your comfort zone, and like I said, you knew you had, like I said, I had a job here in Tennessee as long as I wanted it. I could go to Japan every other month. And, it's kind of hard to, and if I wanted to take off 2 or 3 weeks in between there, or if I want to take off a month in between there, I could do that. Where if I was working for them, I wouldn't have had that. I wouldn't have had that. I wouldn't have had no leverage at all. And my worry about that was if I ever gave up Japan, I wouldn't have that deal. So that's kind of the reason I done what I done. Like I said, I mean, Tommy's made 3 or 4 fortunes. I should have done things a little bit different, but man, I don't know that I'd change anything that I've done. I mean, there's been shit. I don't know. They'd say, I think one time somebody asked me who'd fired me the most. They said it had to be Lawler, wouldn't it? I said, no, I think actually Eddie fired me the most, but Lawler would be a close second. But I don't know that I would have changed a lot. But there's been 3 or 4 things I probably should change, but I don't know that I would change them, Gene. And I'm sure Tommy could tell you, and I don't know it, and he might not have a thing that he thinks he should have done different, and then again he might have a dozen that he thinks he should.
Yeah. Probably closer to a dozen than none. That's for dang sure. Yeah. But that's it. That hindsight ain't worth the flip, man. As a whole, I mean, I'm sure there is things I could have done different, but I'm like Dougie, as a whole, man, I mean, it's been all good. Shoot, I'm here 50 years later. I mean, so, I've been in the business. I've been very lucky, very blessed both. I mean, greatest wrestling fans in the world is wrestling fans, because they don't forget you, man. I mean,
now here's,
I'm living proof.
Here's the kicker, G. Now, I can say this. Other people can't say this, but we used to bet in the 93 or 4 or somewhere through there. We'd all have just the mine and Tommy's running bunch. We'd say, well, who's going in 10 years still be alive? Now, that's normal people don't say that, right? and everybody would bet Tommy's going to be the first one gone if
First one gone.
Oh my God!
First divorce.
Yeah.
Look at you showing them they were wrong, Tommy.
And that's what I was going to say. That we could say, because we would play with each other and they'd say, "What's Tommy doing tonight?" And they'd say, "Well, how?" And we'd look at all of our ages and everything, and shit, Tommy's going to outlive all of us. And I thought, and the funny thing, Jamie Dundee, he'd always be one to say, "All right, and Tommy, look, what's he doing?" Tommy would say, "You just mind your own business and let me mind mine." I laugh. You talk about some funny nights and some funny stories. But like I said, I'd have to get Tommy every once in a while. I'd have to get Tommy off of him because, hell, he'd have both crying. I'd say, leave him alone for a little bit. In which me and Tommy, we'd take Jamie's little boy with us and let him ride back from the towns with us. He wasn't 5 years old then and everything. But I mean, you talk about some good times.
Well, I mean, from everything I know about you guys, you both seem to be, very happy with your lives. And when you go looking around in the past and you start monkeying with decisions and things you did different, especially like that WWF thing you're talking about, who knows what changes there could alter your whole existence? And I don't know, man. I think you did good. I think you're happy where you're at. Who's to say that going and making a few more bucks in the short term of the WWF, I don't know that you'd be any happier today. And I certainly don't think that you'd be happy if you had to go be Elvis every weekend at these conventions.
Well, I was going to say they could have called me the Blue Rooster or something. You can't ever
exactly.
tell. I could have been like Tommy's 6-man tag partner. I could have had a streak up the middle of my head and a blue thing, a red thing, or
red.
I could have been a red rooster, a blue rooster, or something. But anyway, knock on wood. Like I said, I think it was cool. Like, and I, from somewhere when I was a kid. I think it's in a magazine that I saw where Tommy had went to Madison Square Garden. And you know what was cool? I went to Madison Square Garden. My brother carried me up there with him, and I got to watch him wrestle. But I can honestly say I would have loved to wrestle in the Garden. And if I would have pushed forward a little bit, I'm sure I could have been on one of the shows in the Garden, but I would have had to push and ask Vince and I didn't like having to ask people for stuff. Yeah. So, and that was one of the deals Lawler was kind of give me a lecture about. He said, "What, do you just not want to freaking make a whole lot of money?" And I said, "Well, I think I'm doing good." But he was talking about hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars, and I understand that now. But at the time, I was making a good living, and plus, I thought I was making a good living here. But in Japan, I was really doing good in Japan, and here I was actually kind of almost always on guarantee. So, you know, if you've got that, Gene, you got stability, and to me, stability, and two, like I said, we could take off for a month if I wanted to at a time, or 2 weeks, and that was always really cool.
And Tommy, who's to know if you'd went up there with Terry Taylor, there might have been a Rooster tag team. You know, there might have been
the blue
y'all.
Rooster. There you go.
It could have been the red and the blue.
The red blue Rooster. There you go.
Yeah, hey,
well, it's never too late.
Maybe that's why I didn't go, because I didn't want to be the blue Rooster.
Hey,
never know.
What color rooster would Ricky Morton been? He was the sixth man.
He's white rooster.
He'd have to be white. You have red, white, and blue. Y'all have been y'all had a patriotic gimmick. Oh man! Hey, we could. You know, Terry's still out there. We can make this happen. You know, we might could get this. We might could get this added on to one and done. Or
Terry
something,
was out there. I hear you. Gee, what you doing knocking somebody?
I'm not knocking him. I said he was out there. He's still out there available. He might be that mystery partner. Jerry Taylor might be Shane Douglas's partner. And you're going to wish you had to said all this.
Hey, I'm going to tell you what.
Hey, I didn't say nothing.
Yeah. Hey,
I don't want heat with the Red Rooster, man.
Hey,
that'd be.
I'm going to tell you one thing. If they start playing some music, and it's whatever that Red Rooster music was, and I hear that shit in Philadelphia, I'd like to fall out in the middle of the ring.
You hear cock-a-doodle-doo at your ass in Philadelphia, you better be ready. It's going to get real extreme then. Well, I guess that's as good a place as any to start winding this down. So don't forget tomorrow, the Jackson Comic Expo at the Carl Perkins Center. These guys are going to be there 9 to 4 at least, and then they're going to truck it on over to Blytheville for that St. Jude benefit over there. It's going to be a good time for a good cause. Make sure you come out and see these guys. The Memphis Mafia is coming.
And Gene, we need to tell everybody to rate, review, and subscribe, whatever platform you're listening on. If you want some merchandise, pro wrestling tees, Gilbert family store, Memphis Mafia shirts, me and Tommy will be wearing those Saturday at the Comic Con, the Comic Expo in Jackson. We'll have on the first ones right there, and everybody gets to see them and everything. But Gene's got a store with them, and I mean, you can get all the Memphis Mafia merch you want and everything. And like I said, we appreciate everybody listening. We want all the fans. Send in your questions to Gene. Me and Tommy love to answer questions, and Gene's got a ton of other stuff for us to talk about. But listen, thanks everybody for listening, and peace. We're out.
Before we get out of here, I just want to take a moment to remind everyone, if you have an upcoming wrestling show, autograph signing, collector show, Comic-Con, or any event or booking that you would like to inquire about the services of Dangerous Doug Gilbert and or Tommy Wildfire Rich, just send us an email at douggilbertpodcast@outlook.com, and someone will get back to you as soon as possible to get more information on your event and do the best we can to make that happen. Also, if you are interested in advertising your event, your business, your product to the listeners of Dangerous Conversations, as well as to promote your event, business, or product across all our social media platforms, you can send that inquiry to douggilbertpodcast@outlook.com. We would love to work together with you to get that out there to the listeners of Dangerous Conversations. Remember to check out douggilbertpodcast.com. There you can find links to all things related to this podcast, as well as Doug and Tommy themselves. You'll find a link to the Dangerous Conversations Facebook page,
and the Dangerous Conversations Twitter, now known as X, and we're always posting content daily, involving the Gilbert family, Tommy Rich, all sorts of things from their career. We got magazine articles, videos, pictures, you name it. We're posting new content every single day. Make sure you follow so you don't miss out on any of that. Plus, you can follow Doug and Tommy's personal Facebook pages on there. Dangerous Doug Gilbert. You can search that on Facebook. You can also search Tommy Wildfire Rich. They both have Facebook pages. And Doug does have an X page as well, and you can follow them there. But if you really want to help support, you can go to the Gilbert Family Pro Wrestling Tees store, which there's a link to there on the douggilbertpodcast.com. And you can find t-shirts of Doug, Eddie, and their famous father, Tommy Gilbert, as well. Also, Tommy Rich is going to be having some t-shirts coming up very soon. Follow him on Facebook. We'll be talking about him here. But look for some cool new Tommy Wildfire Rich t-shirts coming out soon that you can partake in as well. Also, if you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on the platform of your choice. It would really help us in building up the podcast for the future. Plus, it helps us know what you like, what you don't like, where we need to take this podcast moving forward. Also, if you want to see a whole bunch of matches, promos, and angles, a lot of the ones that you're going to hear us talk about on this very podcast, you can go and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@RetroWrestlingArchive. Of course, it's linked right there at douggilbertpodcast.com, and you will find a ton of matches featuring Eddie Gilbert, Tommy Gilbert, Doug Gilbert, Tommy Wildfire Rich. There's playlists of all them that feature hundreds of matches of each of them. So make sure you go check that out. And not just of them, there are thousands, literally, at this point, of videos from wrestling from across the territory days, you name it. If we don't have the video uploaded to our channel, we at least have organized you a playlist of just about every territory, every show that's out there. You can find it in one convenient location there on YouTube at the Retro Wrestling Archive. Plus, don't forget, you can find all things related to my popular Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast at uswapodcast.com. And last but certainly not least, we are proud to be a part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Go on over to WrestleCopia.com to check out all the great pro wrestling related podcasts and various content that our friend Ray Russell provides you. You'll be glad you did. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week for another episode of Dangerous Conversations with Dangerous Doug Gilbert and Tommy Wildfire Rich.
In the heart of Tennessee, born with pride, Doug and Tommy taking rings in stride. Memphis legends never backing down, wrestling warriors, they wear the crown. USWA, glory in their veins, fighting legends breaking chains. In the squared circle they made their name. Podcast champions, it's their claim to fame. On the mic they rode, on the map they soared. Dangerous conversations, plans for and gold. Podcast kings ruling the waves. Memphis wrestling raising the stage. From title belts to Hall of Fame, Doug and Tommy carved the name. Fists of fury and hearts of gold. Every story, every fight retold. Tales of glory, laughter, cry. Tennessee warriors with hearts open wide. In the ring or on the air, legends living without a care. On the mic they roar, on the map conversations fans want to know. I got